Go ahead and call this meeting to order. Joplin Schools Board of Education regular session, November 21st, 2017. Start with roll call, please, Pat.
Derek Gander.
Present.
Lori Musser.
Here.
Sherrick Dermott.
Here.
Brent Jordan.
Present.
Deborah Gould.
Here.
Jeff Coe.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay. If you could all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. This way.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, you've got the agenda there before you. Any changes anybody sees that are required?
I move that we approve the agenda as it exists.
All right.
I'll
So,
second.
motion by Sherrick, second by Derek. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, that motion passes. So first up, reports. Celebrations. I've got a nice stack of celebrations, so I'm going to start here with the packet that we've got. And I'll wait for everybody to get, there we go. So a celebration for the Joplin Schools All-State Swimmers. So Joplin Schools earned all-state recognition at the Misha State Swimming Championship on November 3rd and 4th in St. Peters, Missouri. Joplin High School junior Avery Olschlager placed 8th in the 100-yard breaststroke, the time of 100, well, that's a long time, 1 minute, .68 seconds. I have, Avery, are you here? All right.
All right.
Avery? That was good enough for 8th place in the state. Congratulations. And I think Alec Davis is here also. Alec placed 4th in the 200-yard freestyle with a time of 1 minute 43.58 seconds and placed 5th in the 100-yard freestyle with a time of 47.59. So 4th and 5th. That's awesome. Thank you guys for coming and sharing that with us, all-state swimmers.
That's great.
We're also, they're going to get a picture taken. We're also, tonight, we're recognizing our seniors for the fall athletics. So Alec and Tanner Movick are from boys swimming there on the left, and the girls, Kyla, Erin, Quinlan, Tabby, Savannah, and Gabby, all of our senior tennis players. All right. Next up, we've got boys soccer. Mackenzie Crouch, Nick Sloan, Landon Moore, Gabe Avila, Garrett Nemo, David Amwango, Liam Clevenger, and John Loden. And then for the girls golf, Elizabeth Kingery, Caitlin Gilland, and Anna Iorio. Cross country seniors, got Eli Ventura, Laurel Singh, Tyler Kurt, Keaton Campbell, Tyler Gray. The back row, we've got Josie Phillips, Braden Drake, Bobby Owens, Caleb Ellman, and Andrew Brozek. And then we've got our softball seniors, Taylor Klaus, Audrey Larrent Miller, Lindsay Rader, Grace Overman, Michaela Cushney, Josie Barlett, Caitlin Maples. And then we got our volleyball seniors, Caroline Lupance, Jessica Zengel, Jillian Lopez, Riley Sitton, and Julia Wade. And then these, the students, this was for our Honor Guard, Joplin Eagles Honors, our veterans. The students and staff at Cecil Floyd, Columbia, Eastmoreland, Irving, Soaring Heights, Stapleton, West Central, East Middle School, North Middle School, South Middle School, and Joplin High School each planned a variety of events to recognize Veterans Day. The recognitions varied at each site, but the message was singular. For your bravery, hard work, and dedication to our country, we thank you. That was a nice recognition. Yep. The FTC and Skills USA, they made a donation to Souls Harbor. The Skills USA members made a much appreciated delivery to Souls Harbor on October 25th when they delivered more than 900 canned and non-perishable food items to help stock the Souls Harbor food pantry before the holidays and cold weather arrived. Skills USA members organized the food drive to coincide with their Skills Make a Difference week. Food donations were accepted from October 4th to 24th. Their goal was achieved. Students made a difference to members of their community in need. So that's some Eagle pride there. Thank you, guys. So a few celebrations around the district. We thank all of our folks in our fall athletics, and especially those seniors that we recognize tonight. So let's see. Next up, the policy committee. Did you guys have a meeting?
Yeah, we met a couple weeks ago. There were 7 policies that we reviewed, 3 that'll be on the consent agenda. One of them regarding school board vacancies that'll be coming up, one on evaluations, one on some part-time employment, and then 4 policies for first reading that Ashley will address.
Excellent. Okay. All right, on to the superintendent's data report.
The first one we have up is audit report. Dr. Langford?
Well, we're very fortunate to have Diane Klosterman here with us today and representing the firm that you should have copies at your desk. And basically, she's going to make the report and then respond to any questions that you have. And hopefully, when we're finished, we'll be agreed to publish the annual report we're required to do in the newspaper.
Welcome back.
Do you have a PowerPoint slide for me that I sent over? I sent that to Gigi. If not, I've got a copy of it.
Let me get the copy.
Okay. It's down here somewhere. While they're queuing that up, I'll just introduce the firm to you because I think we've got a couple of new board members. Our firm is located in Richmond, Missouri, and we have 25 employees, and 10 of those employees are auditors. We audit 42 school districts. This is what we do. We're just not doing it as a side job. We spend all summer from July until November auditing school districts. You're my second to the last board meeting this year, so we're about to finish up our audit season, and I actually start doing tax planning next week for some of our farm and business owners. So we're full service. We also audit non-for-profits, other governmentals, and do a ton of trust work for individuals throughout the state of Missouri that have trust returns that are needed. So we keep very busy. Not only do we go out and audit school districts, we also do bookkeeping for some school districts. There's some schools that don't want to do their own bookkeeping, or they don't have the resources to do that, so we actually do that for them. And so we are experiencing the same things you are experiencing throughout the year, which is good for you as a district because we educate ourselves early on what's coming down the pike, and Susan's got a big task before her with getting some new account codes in and figuring out how to have comparability to prior years. And I've added a little note about that in your report to administration. We're living through what Susan's going to be living through for the next couple of months. And so we are in this right along with you, and if you have questions throughout the year, any of our schools are welcome to give us a call. A lot of our schools, when they're booking on new debt and things like that, we can help you through that. If you have issues with having to revise anything or do any reporting or anything like that, we're available to you throughout the year, not just during the audit. Now, what I'm going to do this evening is just share with you a few points from the financial statements, and then I'll let you get on with your evening. So we're going to start with your audit report. It works, great. So if you follow along in the book, you're welcome to. I've got the page numbers at the bottom of each slide, and you're welcome to follow along. And I'm going to start with page 1. It's right behind the table of contents. And what I indicate in our opinion paragraph is that the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects, and that's a clean opinion on your financial statements. Behind our opinion and behind our report is about 12 pages of management discussion and analysis. And I really love the management discussion and analysis. It's an opportunity for management to compare the year under audit and the previous year and share things with the reader of the financial statements. I'm not going to go through that this evening, but I do encourage you to take a look at it. We're going to move on to page 13, and I always pick on the statement of activities because it is pretty complex. And so I just like to introduce you to it, and I did make one change to all of my schools this year. On the second line down there, under governmental activities, you'll see instruction, and then right underneath of that is student activities. And I pulled student activities and listed it separately this year, and that's all of your clubs, organizations, groups, arts, and sports. And as you go to the right on your financial statement, the next column is expenditures, then any type of charges that you have related to those particular activities, and then finally your net expenditure on the far right side. I pulled out student activities because it used to be in instruction. I really didn't like it there. I thought it needed to be stated separately so you could see the costs associated with the activities you provide for your students and then whatever revenue stream you have associated with that. You are my last board presentation of this year, and you are my first district that broke even on student activities. So oftentimes there's a cost, an excess cost associated with those student activities that then are covered by general revenue. So you actually broke even or made a little bit of money on student activities. Those two that I have highlighted down below in red are food service and community services. Those are typically the only two activities that you have that can break even, and you did just that on food service. Food service actually made a bit of money this year. You need to make some money on food service periodically because you have to repair and replace. And so you need those funds available to buy new ovens and stoves and dishwashers and all of those sorts of things. Additionally, you're not allowed to underwrite your regular meal prices with your free and reduced. So you do need to charge a fair price for your regular lunch prices. Underneath of that is your community services, and community services are anything outside of K-12. Those can be before and after care, daycare, VOTEC, adult education part of VOTEC. And that area right there too can break even depending on what the board's take is on what you should provide outside of K-12. I have some inner city school districts that actually have before and after care completely free. They want to make sure those kids in inner city are safe, and so they provide before and after care for free. So it's whatever, again, that you want to underwrite with your general revenues. What are those? That's your basic formula, property taxes, sales tax, and so forth. When I compare this to the previous year, I did notice that instruction and transportation costs were your largest increases in cost when compared to the previous year. This is your balance sheet, and remember you're on cash basis. So all you're going to see is just your cash and then how that cash is allocated. If you're making a note on your bound copy there, and you can go to note M, and I'm going to go to that. It's on way back on page 27, but it explains this bottom half of your balance sheet. What is the deal with all of these funds and whether or not they're pigeonholed for one area or another. So when we look at our four funds there, your general fund, special revenue, debt service, and capital project fund, you can see in the general fund that $591,000 of that is restricted to scholarships. That means you've got scholarship money in it, and that money needs to be spent on scholarships. Professional development, DESE requires you spend a certain amount of money on professional development, and you had $21,000 worth of unspent funds for professional development that's going to carry forward. And on your ASBR, that's restricted to professional development. You slide on down to the bottom half of general fund, and you can see there that we have an assigned amount. Student activities, several of those had balances. Those clubs and organizations that get to roll their balances forward, you maintain those balances, and they get to use those the next year. A good example is ninth grade, and they're going to carry their balances forward each year through their senior year. And then that next one is food service. If you have excess funds where you've had revenues exceed expenditures in food service, DESE requires that you set those monies aside and you use those excess of revenues over expenditures on food service. So the goal here is to make sure that if you have an excess balance like this, that you always get all of your expenses coded to food service. You think about maybe janitorial services in a building. Are you splitting that if half of their day is spent in the food service area? We slide on to the right, debt service. You can see all of that's restricted because that money is there to cover your principal and interest payments on your general obligation bonds. And then over in Fund 4, the Capital Projects Fund, you can see all of that is committed. What I do at the end of your fiscal year is accumulate all of the capital outlay projects that the board has approved, but those projects haven't been finished. And so all of the funds that you have in Fund 4 are actually committed to projects that the board has approved at or before 6:30. All right, and this is, if you're in a business operation, this will be the most familiar looking financial statement. This is back on page 15, and this is your statement of revenues, expenditures, and fund balance. And what you have here again is all 4 of your funds. You have your revenues, which we'll talk about in just a second, the expenditures that we went over briefly a couple of slides back, and I just want to look at your change in fund balance. That's the third from the bottom, and you can see there that your general fund had an increase of a little over $3 million, and that's after the transfer. I don't think this will go this far. The transfer to Fund 4, which was about $3.7 million. So you had a positive increase in your general fund. And then we can see over there you had a big decrease in your debt service fund. Just a reminder, you refunded your 2007 GO bond with your escrow funds that you had available for that refunding at call date. And here is your notes payable. And what we do here is we give you a schedule back on page 24 of where you started out on your bonds payable and your lease participation certificates, what you paid off, what your balance is as of June 30, and what's going to happen next year, whatever you got obligated that you're going to be paying in the fiscal year ended June 30, 2018. And there you can see that big retirement of your bonds payable. That was about a $48 million refunding of your 2007 GO bond. These are your amortization schedules on page 25. This is your amortization schedule on your bonds payable. And this next one, oh, I didn't do an amortization on your lease. There's also an amortization schedule in your footnotes on your leases as well. We just didn't add it to this slide. So if you acquire no more debt, you'd pay off your bonds in 2033. All right. This is a slide that I like you to look at. It's on page 35. And your slide is, I don't usually have this many red marks on my, when I'm planning for a board presentation of this slide, but your graph does not look like anyone else's. And so I just want to point out to you that the reason that is, if you look at how your local revenue had a big decrease, your federal revenue had a big increase, this is not normal. Usually we see those are pretty close to each other within a couple of percents when we're comparing our 5 years. But of course you had large federal dollars come in a couple of years ago whenever you received your FEMA money. And so that skewed your chart. This is not saying you got had a big decrease in your local revenue. It's just that your federal revenue outpaced that in that particular year. I want to point out just a couple of things here when we compare 16 to 17. You can see in your local revenue there was a decrease. I want to let you know, though, that your property taxes increased by about $625,000 when compared to the previous year, and your sales tax increased by about $200,000 when compared to the previous year. The reason you had the drop is because of your earnings on investments. You had all that escrow money in there, growing the interest so that you could refund that bond. So the decrease is substantial, but it's earnings on investments, not your property taxes or sales tax. And then you can see that your state revenue also increased by about $600,000, and that's basic formula money. This next slide is a slide that shows your expenditures for the past 5 years. This one looks more normalized to me. What we always do is pull out large capital outlay, and we normalize that on purpose so that you can see a truer picture of your what makes up the expenditures of the district. And we can see here that typically the expenditures of the district, 80% of those are related to salaries and benefits. So what I know for sure is that you all do your own transportation, and I can't recall if you do your own food service or if that's outsourced. You do your own food service? Yes. Okay. So when you're comparing yourself to other districts, you're like, wow, we're at 82% and they're down at 76. You got to say, wait a minute, do they do their food service and do they do their transportation? Because that's going to skew that, and you want to compare apples to apples. This is my favorite slide. This is your both your reserve ratio, and we're over on page 37, and your average daily attendance. And you can see there that your reserve ratio has had nice bumps for the past 4 years. Your reserve ratio now is at about 27.5%, which is about 3.5 months of reserves. That's a terrific reserve. That means that you'll have the funds available to pay your bills until you get your property tax revenue in December and January. You've got lots of bills that are coming in April or August through December, but your top of your curve on your revenue curve happens in December and January. And then this next one is your average daily attendance, and you can see here it has had a little drop over the past 2 years. All right, not only do we look at your financial statements and opine on the material correctness of those financial statements, back on page 42, we're talking to you about the compliance of the district with Missouri laws and regulations, and there's a lot we look at. How do you do on attendance, transportation? Do you follow both the Missouri statutes and the board policy on expenditures, competitive bids, construction? Y'all do a terrific job on competitive bids. All of your documentation was in place and was easy to follow when I tested your Fund 4 expenditures. What we indicate here is the district's assertion that it complied with Missouri laws and regulations is fairly stated. We had a couple of immaterial non-compliance, and I won't even say non-compliance, just things that needed to be corrected on the reporting of transportation and attendance, but those were immaterial, so they're over here on this next page 43. Those have been corrected, so we'll just pass by those. I want to just remind you that when we're out doing your audit, we're auditing on a sample basis, and we're opining on whether or not your financial statements are materially correct. On page 44, we're talking about your internal controls, but I want to caution that we were not here to audit your internal controls. However, we do look at heavily at your internal controls because it helps us determine the scope of your audit. If we see that you've got really sound internal controls here, we test those controls, we see that that's true, we can move on to another area and spend more time there. And Susan can tell you we've actually had some time to get out and visit your schools. We like to do that because we want to make sure the internal controls that you've written and established here at the district office level are filtering to your school districts and being performed at the building level. And so we're not opining on whether or not your internal controls are perfect, but we are saying that we didn't see any material weaknesses in your internal controls. Next, on page 46 and 47 is our report on your compliance with uniform guidance over the expenditure of federal dollars. We're saying, number one, we did not see any non-compliance with the compliance requirements associated with the expenditure of those federal dollars, and also we didn't see any material weaknesses in the internal controls that overarch those expenditures of those federal dollars. So if you look at your report card, all those no's are a good thing. We audited Title I this year, block grant, and then Perkins. All right, so there you go. No findings on your federal programs. I want to remind you of a couple things. So we're out of the bound booklet. You have a stapled document. It's called the Report to Administration. And so sometimes we just want to share things with the district. While we were out on your audit, we saw this or that, and we want to either share a best practice or something that's coming down the pike for the district. I want to jump over to one more. Accounting structure change. And this is what I alluded to when we first started visiting. So Susan's been really busy finishing out everything she had to do with last year and getting through our audit at fieldwork, which is a number of days. Now she's got this huge project, along with every other school district, of setting all these codes up that are being required by DESE. There is building codes that have to be set up, project codes that have to be set up, plus she has to figure out how to still get you all comparative information if you need it. And so she's going to have her head down for probably a month or so just getting all those codes in place. Now this says you have to have those codes in place by July 1 of 2018, but really you got to get it done right now because you're developing your budget. So that budget has to be related to this new coding structure that DESE's handed down to us. It's getting lots of talk. I think that was the talk of the town at the MOASBO conference that they had just a week or so ago. And this next one, I just wanted to let you know that last year, whenever the state auditors were out doing audits, they did none of the normal audits where they come out and look at your compliance with state statute and with your own board policies. They concentrated solely on data governance. They audited 5 school districts, and they looked at how they were taking care of all of the areas that we worry about now, even in our personal life. Do we have a disaster recovery plan? Do we have a plan in place to make sure that the data we acquire from students is safe from the moment we acquire it till the date we dispose of it? Do we have an incident plan in place? Should we have any sort of security breach? And are we training our staff adequately on what to do if we should have an issue with a security breach. Are we doing our passwords correctly? All that sort of thing. So that's what the state auditors spent their time doing last year, is going out and visiting 5 school districts. They didn't give them a pass or a fail or an in-between. They just said, here's the things that y'all ought to work on. So your IT department can use that as a guide in making sure that your all's technology and your data is safe. And state auditors say that's all they're doing, and they're going back to doing the traditional audits they've been doing in the past. So they'll cut loose again this year. But that is what they were interested in last year, and I know it's a big issue everywhere you go. Even in our small firm of 25 people, we're just so picky about making sure that our data is safeguarded, and that was the focus of the state auditors last year. So that's the information I wanted to share with you. Just to sum up, reserve ratio is terrific. The professionalism in your finance department is just awesome. I really loved working with the people in the finance department, and we could see that they just dedicated themselves to us while we were here and gave us what we needed, and we really appreciate that. Is there any questions that you have for me?
The big question, the things that you saw last year, when you looked at them this year, there weren't anything materially that you saw that were still outstanding?
No, you can see that your report to administration got lots shorter. And so what happens is if sometimes we'll have the same recommendations year after year in a smaller district especially, you know, when they have issues with segregation of duties or written policies and procedures, and they can't handle making that better just because they're small. What I saw in this district was we gave you a lot of recommendations last year. That's normal for us as a firm and an auditee that gets a new auditor. And I saw a lot of those recommendations addressed by the time we got back this year.
Great.
All right.
Certainly appreciate your effort and time you took. I know you spent a couple days down here and with the whole team, so appreciate the thoroughness and professionalism, and certainly appreciate a clean audit.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good job, John.
It is.
All right.
It is.
Next up,
Next up
Everyone should
is map data and annual performance report.
Dr. Lang? No.
No, it's Stephen.
Next up is Dr. Gilbreth. Map data.
All right. So I've got the annual performance report coming up, and I've taken it from this perspective to give a little bit of information about some of the acronyms and how it's done, and then give you the information and our action steps to look at the areas. So, Missouri School Improvement Act, it's a 5-year cycle, and this is the end of MSIP Cycle 5, and we'll start MSIP Cycle 6 this next school year. The state looks at 5 areas: academic achievement, subgroup achievement, college and career readiness, attendance, and graduation. And if you look at those at the bottom there, must earn points in 5 areas. If you can look at the areas that we need to gain the most points: academic achievement being 56 points, college and career readiness being 30, and graduation being 30. So you can see that the subgroup and the attendance don't bring us that many points in the APR report from the state. However, everything's important. Mm-hmm. However, our big areas that we need to make sure we don't take our eye off the target is academic achievement, college and career readiness, and graduation. And so, and you can see that that we are fully accredited and received our points for full accreditation. When the state looks at it, calculating academic achievement, there are 4 areas: the below basic, basic, proficient, and advanced. There's another level not determined, and that is a student that either did not take the test or they didn't make any attempt whatsoever at the test. You can open up the test, put your name in there, answer a couple questions, and you'll get the least value, but at least you won't get a level not determined. A district must test at least 95% of their kids, and which we always easily do. LEA, a lot of times you'll hear that term. It's local education agents. We're required through the Missouri Assessment Program to test 95% of our kids. Ultimately, what we get back for achievement is what's known as the MAP Performance Index. And the MAP Performance Index is calculated by taking, let's say if we look at all fourth grade math across the district, all scores are added together, the sum of every score. It's divided by the number of students and it's multiplied by 100. And that gives us our MAP index. The state looks at that for your growth over time, how you're doing over year after year after year. That's the calculation that they do for the academic achievement. And so they look at that for growth over time. Next. And if you look at this, this is where the breakdown of where we got our points this year, and some areas of not necessarily deficient, but areas that we need to improve, obviously. If you look at the top, we've received the full 16 points for the, well, broken down, but this is the academic achievement. We received 48 of the 56 points. And the subgroups, we've got 8 of the 14. College and career readiness, 23 of the 30. Attendance, 7.5 of the 10. And graduation rate, on the rolling average, we've got 100% or all 30 points of our graduation. So incredible job with that. Our composite score for the ACT was 18.7, and that has remained fairly consistent over the years. And that, as you'll look at that, that is giving the ACT to nearly about 90% of our junior class. So that is the composite of about every student in the junior class. So really 18.7 is pretty good. So our academic achievement over the years, as you look at the beginning, the genesis of MSIP 5, we got 39 of the 56 points. The following year, 42 of the 56. And then it remained steady, 48, 48, and 48. In this, I have a couple of notations here. In 2017, as you well know, the state did not calculate EOC Algebra 1 or EOC English 2. However, if you look at the raw scores of those two tests, we showed performance increase. So as you look at that 48 points, had the state calculated those points within the metric of that, we probably, I can't tell you what our growth would have been, obviously, because they didn't calculate it, but we did have academic achievement in all areas and including those two areas. So it's difficult to determine. The great news is we're not losing ground there in our academic achievement. And as I said, we probably would have seen a slight bump in that 48. I won't even venture a guess. And of course, everybody knows why the Algebra 1 and the English 2 were not put into the calculation, correct? No. There's supposition on why, and the thing that we've gotten back, the closest we can determine is, as you look at that, the two tests there were two tests given. And if you look at the algebra, there was an easy test and a difficult test. And no district knows which test they got. But when they went to average those scores together, Questar put them all together. And as DESE looked at the scores that came back, they noticed huge discrepancies in districts across the state. And so they asked, how's this possible that this happened? And so as they went back and looked at that, they realized you're comparing apples to oranges and not apples to apples. And so the DESE questioned Questar, and we don't have a ton of answers as to why, because certainly obviously with everything else, there will be litigation to follow. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, that's basically the story that we got, is that the test did not match, and then so DESE called that into question. If you look at this is a couple places in the college and career readiness, just so you kind of know, college and career readiness, we're gauged on 6 points. And if you can calculate number 1, number 2, and number 3, they go together. Number 4 goes together, and number 5 and number 6 go together. Number 1, 2, and 3, that is all students that take the ACT, the SAT, the Compass, which Compass is no longer used, or the ASVAB, receive a score that is satisfactory to achieve the state standard. And if you look at the state standard with that, if a student gets a 26 or above, we'll get a 1.25. And that's just the calculation that we're given. If a student receives a 22 to a 26 on the ACT, we get a 1. If a student gets an 18 to a 21, we get a 0.75. And if they get a 17, we get a 0.25. Anything below that, 17 we get a 0.25, but anything below that, we get a 0. Now, students can take the ACT multiple times, and the highest score is recorded. Same thing with the ASVAB or with the work key, which the work key is sort of that, the technology piece of that. It's the same equivalent as the ACT, only like if you were on a tech track. So basically the thing that you want to avoid, if you calculate all of those scores that the student takes of the ACT, the SAT, the Compass, or the ASVAB, you want to take it enough so that you can get as close to the 1.25 as you can. And that's how the APR is calculated. It doesn't have anything to do with did they score. It's not about college entrance. It's about did we score a high enough score to get APR points. So then the bottom two, it's about graduation and the post-graduation, and that's the tricky one right there. There are students who go to college, no brainer. They take the ACT, they graduate, and they're going to college. We get our points from those students. Students take the ASVAB, they're going to the military, fantastic. We track them, we know that. The one that becomes difficult sometimes to track are those students that graduate from high school, but then we lose track of them 6 months after graduation. So we're putting a couple things in place, some questions on that, the benchmarks that we collect, data that we collect on students, and keep track of them over time throughout their high school career and then beyond high school to make sure that we're on track to where are you 6 months after graduation, and are you either in a job that would go back to some of the courses you took in high school, so the career track, or you're moving on to college or to the military. That's the place that, and those are the big areas, and then of course graduation rate. But those are the big areas where we get our APR points and the calculations of those APR points. That makes sense? So moving forward, we're looking at the areas that we need to improve, and obviously all of the places that we need to improve on mathematics. I took all of our scores, total scores from K-12, any student that took the math test, and whether it be EOC or the MAP test, and I calculated those through where did we receive points and where were the areas of deficiency. And the areas of deficiency, everything fell within two categories in about the 90th percentile, and that was number sense base 10 or number sense fractions. And anything that has to do with that notion of falling under the mathematical piece of number sense routines, base 10, and number sense fractions, which are the two areas on the MAP test and the EOC scoring. They fell within that. So to look at that and to address that, we have taken on a book study, a number sense routines, and how can we shore up those things, number one, in our curriculum, but really more importantly in our practice and our teaching practices, giving teachers the expertise that they need to address number sense, and whether it be in number sense base 10 or number sense fractions, which obviously fractions as kids get 4th and 5th grade, that becomes and any math teacher will tell you once they hit that add, subtract, multiply, divide fractions, that becomes problematic with anything that has to do with that. The other piece of reading and written piece is the phonics and phonemic awareness. And all of those pieces that go within that, whether it be spelling or grammar or anything that can hit upon those pieces. So we're doing a big book study on phonics from A to Z, and shoring up those pieces in our curriculum as we develop that, and making sure that teachers are the absolute experts in teaching phonics, which has been absent and absent in a lot of places. Don't get me wrong, not absent as in not apparent, but just not to the level that we want. And so we found a couple of resources that we know are going to address those areas that will shore up over the next couple of years. And certainly in our curriculum and our pacing guides, and how we pace instruction, and how instruction is rolled out to kids, and in what capacity through strategies. Then obviously DESE has taken steps to rectify that EOC calculation. Okay, so those are the areas that we're looking at very carefully, and that is the mathematics. Science, we've got looking at that through our curriculum, English language arts in the subgroups, and the mathematics in the subgroups, then the assessment and the after high school placement. So those are the areas that we're addressing that we didn't receive as many points as we needed to. Understanding certainly we're fully accredited, but those are the areas that we really need to focus on, not losing track of anything else.
Sure.
Next. That shows you, and that last slide was a little bit sometimes difficult to read. So that gives you the idea of those areas that we really need to hit and that we're going to hit. Okay, so growth over time. So if you look at this, our math was 37%. If we calculate our math out over the next 3 years, I would love to think that we're going to get higher than that, but I want to see at least 5% each year, so a 15% increase in all of those areas, math, science, and then with that throughout the subgroups as well. I would really like to say that it's going to be greater than that, and I'm smooth convinced that it will be, but I don't want to oversell it or overstate it. I want to be, within reason, and so, but I do firmly believe that through the growth of our curriculum, the hard look that we're giving at that, and the hard look that we're giving to instruction, and to those places that we know for sure that the data absolutely and emphatically is telling us where are the areas that we need to improve. And so we know those, we know those clearly and are addressing those very clearly. So these are our action steps: to create a guaranteed and viable curriculum that all teachers understand and can follow, provide professional development for teachers to use the curriculum, be effective and efficient, and implement all components of curriculum, complete the book studies and the number sense routines, implement strategies to teach these routines, create processes for data collection and monitoring by students and by teachers and students alone, or together. Science, create a guaranteed and viable curriculum, provide the professional development, obviously, and how can we look at mathematics and science in cross-curricular areas, and how can they complement one another? Develop a program of instructional practice that provides the necessary materials for that instruction. Looking at pacing guides, the next place, this is an example, this will show you an example of the first pacing guide that I've created. I'm creating pacing guides for K-5, math, science, social studies, anything that's taught is pacing guides and curriculum that go along with that. And the next slide gives you an example of what our pacing guides will look like for every single class, every single grade level: mathematics, social studies, science, language arts, reading. This is a 5th grade math. You might go back to that for just a second. That pacing guide. 5th grade mathematics for 2017. I want to, hopefully, by March or April, I would like to have a curriculum and pacing guide for everything we teach to bring to the board for your approval, to look it over, and to board-approved curriculum and pacing guides and strategies that go along with that, so that we can post this on our website and that any parent will have absolute access to go here and look and see what exactly are we doing. And you'll notice this is first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, and it's by priority standards. And how do the standards, so for example, if you look at this 5 NBTA1, that stands for fifth grade, number sense base 10, standard A1. And that's how you look at that. And there are supporting standards that support each and every one of those. But we've looked at it from a standpoint of what are the priority standards that really have to be addressed, not to just meet state testing, but to really give kids exactly what they need to be successful and to really understand mathematics. So, and as we look at this, just so you know, the mathematics is a really super important component that reaches so many different avenues of a child's life and things that they can do. That we're really looking at this notion of there's procedural math and then there's conceptual math. And procedural math are just the algorithms of mathematics. How do we do? How do we accomplish? How can we be proficient in mathematics? But the conceptual mathematics is this notion of number sense. So that as kids, subitizing and those kinds of things. Subitizing is to look at any given, like if you threw out 10 die and there were 5s and 3s, that students would be able to look at that and say in their mind, I can add those numbers together in my brain without counting them. So in other words, they can see 5 and 5 is 10 and 3 is 13. And they just look at it and know in their brain through number sense routines. And so this notion helps kids to conceptualize math in their brain, and then it really helps them as they skip count, and which then brings them into understanding their math facts. And as they memorize their math facts, then it's beyond just the rote memory of memorizing their math facts, which they need to do. However, then they can conceptually see numbers, and it makes sense to them in their brain. So this is where all this work is going. Next slide. The subgroups, we're creating curriculum that looks at, as you look at subgroups, typically it takes 30 students to make a subgroup. We have subgroups in free and reduced, and some areas, some minority areas, not very many, but those are our big ones, and special ed. And so how do we create a guaranteed and viable curriculum for all of those subgroups to access? And so I'm looking at creating the obviously when I say it's a huge group of teachers and myself and people that are really doing the work here. But creating curriculum that teachers will have access to and be able to collaboratively talk to one another about. So if it's 7th grade communication arts, there would be a 7th grade communication arts that would look at a curriculum that could help our special ed students or students who need to access curriculum in a different way. So whether it be a modification or an accommodation. So we'll have, in those critical areas, we'll have 2 sets of curriculum that all teachers can have access to. Same thing with mathematics, and that's basically what that is stating. Completing the book studies, making that a part of how we do business, and also up in obviously making sure that any student that we have, an ELL student that we would have, has access to becoming proficient of the English language. And then college and career readiness. If you'll look at this post-secondary piece in the middle section, support the counselors in their efforts to determine where all students graduated from JHS are planning to go upon graduation. I will tell you this, looking at all of the processes and procedures that we have in place, I can tell you that without a doubt, our high school counselors are all over it. Now, Dr. Eggleston and myself looked at this, and we're going to sit down with the counselors and just looking at it and taking a hard look. So how can we help you improve this? So the middle ones, create questions that will help with early tracking of graduates. Example, Do you currently have a job in which you are planning to stay employed? So if a high school senior is like, yes, I'm working at Jim's Welding, Heliarc, and I plan on staying there, and I will either attend a technical school or I will continue down this path. I went to Franklin Tech and took welding as a piece of that. That answers the question, and we don't have to start chasing these kids from pillar to post, trying to determine where they've gone after graduation. So that's just one way that we can, it's a win-win situation. Do we know how can we best help these kids post-graduation, and how can we get the APR points a little more easily accessible? And then APR is, that piece of it is due to DESE February 15th, but through actually April and then actually through May, if we have a hardship of, hey, we've really been struggling and we found 3% of our kids that we couldn't find, we're going to do a follow-up report to DESE to, that's the last piece down there. But we want to make sure we understand the February 15th, the hard deadlines of core data to be given to the state. We want to make sure that we're on top of that. But again, I want to reiterate, our high school counselors, and Dr. Saketa can speak to this, they really are all over it, and they really do keep up with kids and have a plan as to where those kids, where are kids in this process. So thinking about that piece in the middle, can we not do a better, I'm not saying do a better job, so to please not imply that they're not doing a good job, but just to say, how can we help you? And how can we help ourselves get better through the process? I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the end of it. Questions?
I've got two questions.
Yes.
One, with the areas where we wish we would have scored better, did we see that empirically through the NWEA assessments prior in the year?
Yes, we do. Well, especially this year, that we've completed that first piece of NWEA. Yes, and they do show that piece. And NWEA is going to be, once we get really savvy with using it, which Eric Blackford, who is our Federals Program Coordinator, he and I are working really hard with this NWEA to make sure that we are giving principals the professional development that they need to really wrap their brain around it, and then to fully understand how best to bring those reports off and bring information back to teachers so that we can utilize that at its best. But yes, it does correlate to where we are showing deficiencies.
And then the second question was, if we're so proficient at tracking where our kids are going after they leave, how is it that we missed the points through the APR?
On that post-graduation?
Right.
Just that idea of as difficult as it is to track every child. So once
it's a volume?
Yeah, just the volume of kids that graduate and those that, and Dr. Saketa could probably speak to it, having been the high school principal for 14 years, he had a very organized method for looking at that and making sure, hey, especially like if you take that ACT or the ASVAB or the Compass or the
those are the givens.
Yeah,
I mean,
let's
that's
keep
a
a
little
very
easier.
close track on that. Plus, let's keep a very close track, as close as we can, to where are these kids. So it comes down to show you how diligent they are. They search Facebook for these kids. Any little piece of any piece that they can get to find those kids, and then to follow up, where are you and what's your plan? But there are kids that just get away from us and we can't get. So we're trying to put some processes in place that would help us answer that.
Okay.
So it'll be a testament will be how do we do with that?
So not just the concept of working harder, but working smarter.
Absolutely.
Which is why you're creating those exit interview questions to try to front load that.
Yes, absolutely.
Steve, who's involved in the book studies? Is it faculty or administrators or a combination?
All principals. I'm doing that with all of our lit support in Title I, Eric Blackford and myself, and then and principals, and then principals in turn are doing that within their buildings. And the phonics and phonemic awareness is K1, 2, 3, and then the number senses all the way through K5.
Great. Good stuff. All right. Thank you very much.
Very good, thanks.
All right.
Oh,
Next up.
Health and dental reports, Dr. Langford.
You've received the information. They, again, pretty well are self-explanatory as far as the trend in the health plan. We continue to see our fund balances grow up, which that was a year ago. At this time, we had 1.3 million, and now we have 3.7, which that sounds like a big jump, and it is a nice jump, but still, the goal would be to even see that increase more. So your income exceeded the outflow for the last month, and it was a little higher this month than a year ago, but the overall balance continues to improve. And then the dental thing, just it really continues to rock along. A year ago, we had 43 months in reserve. We've got 60 months now. So there's not much more you can say about it, but it looks good.
All right. Thank you.
And then that segues right into the financial report.
Well, the financial report, you have that, and Susan did point out, she laid at your desk, there's no change to the bottom line, but there was a calculation relative to a year ago that's not what you had originally. The total number is the same, but there was just a miscalculation. The statement for health and dental was grossly overstated, but it was undercharged up above. So, but overall, this information, revenue's coming in. We see we're up in revenue dollar-wise, quite a bit from last year. A lot of that is state funding because the adequacy target payment rate is higher. And then we had about 60 more kids on the weighted ADA that we were being paid on. So that's a big one. And then federal is one. It's kind of when it comes in and a given month. It's not like clockwork like the foundation formula payment. But overall, we're trending very well as far as the projection of expenditures as it compares to last year. So.
And I might point out at the conclusion of your financial statements, you do have the breakdown of class size and grade level with attendance, and that was a report that had been requested this month, and we'll start including that monthly.
Any questions on the financials? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Langford. And the enrollment is a piece of that one then?
Will it not scroll?
It's going page by page. I'll take a look at it offline. Okay, excellent. Pat, any public comments? No, sir. Okay, great. We're ready for the consent agenda. Nothing has been asked to be changed. Be happy to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
I'll
second.
Sherry and Derek second. All right, please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, that motion passes. Okay, consent agenda has been approved. Next up is regular agenda item number 1, Dr. Saketa.
Okay, Aaron Hyde is here with Crossland. Dave Pettit is not here tonight. He took off a little bit early on a trip, so we're going to try to do this without him, or at least I am. I know Aaron's going to pick up the slack.
And if you don't like it, it's Dave's fault.
Okay.
Hopefully he didn't leave you with the big bill.
Yeah, well, we have several things to talk to you about tonight. We have change orders basically that amount to about $37,000. And so what we want to do is go through those and kind of give you a little rationale about where we are. The first one is listed as corridor A130, and that is essentially 3 rooms on the back that were added on as alternates, if I remember.
That's correct.
And in the alternates, when it comes to the drawings and elevation, there were some elements of the elevation that weren't considered in the original drawings. So there needed to be an adjustment made in that regard. And if you remember, we were able to take most all the alternate bids.
That's correct.
And that changed the game a little bit for us in a positive way. We could make the structure bigger and accommodate more students. So that's the rationale behind that. We had a difference in interpretation with the city in terms of between our architect and the city and about the lighting, the exterior lighting, especially in the back of the facility. And so there's some adjustments we had to make to meet city code.
That's right. Yeah, and this change order in particular, it's for the light fixtures. Several months ago, you approved the electrical portion of it, but not the fixture portion. Fixture portion is this section.
Okay. The next area is additional building security that wasn't put in the original drawings. And we want to make sure that we installed an alarm system and to keep the place safe as well. And somehow that slipped by at the time in a miscommunication or something, and several months ago. I don't know if you know anything more about that.
All I know is it's adding an additional 5 motion sensors. You do have a little bit of security. It's very minimal. So we added 5 motion sensors and 2 keypads for whenever you get in, you can disarm. So.
Okay. The next one is the drain. It's very complex. I'm going to let Aaron speak pretty much 100% about that.
Okay. Well, we've had a lot of drainage discussions during the board meetings. This drainage is dealing with the north section. In the past, you've approved a drainage system to capture the groundwater. You know, we've had discussion about how the water's coming off of Mercy and then the old tunnel, it's getting into our property. It's all groundwater. This one actually is concerning surface water. So after a few rains, the system has been installed. After a few rains, and they're not even heavy rains, we've noticed a lot of ponding. And the reason for that is you've got area inlets in the north side. There just wasn't enough of them. We're basically breaking the whole north section in 2 quadrants, and the water is flowing east and west. To be able to get 100 feet from the rise of elevation in the back, it's just taken the water a long time to get there, and we've noticed a lot of backing up. Grade-wise, it's pretty flat in the north side. So what this does is this adds additional drains for surface water, not just groundwater, but surface water.
Okay. The next one is accessories in the toilet areas. There were some owner-supplied listed items that we wanted to match up to, and to get that to match up better, we felt like there was a change that needed to be made there. Is there anything you want to add to that?
There was one section, I think it was maybe paper towel dispensers, that we found were cheaper to go through our supplier than the school supplier. And other than that, I think there's 2 other options that we're going directly through Hugo's Industrial Supply, and I know the school uses those guys.
Okay. There's a column, or there's a pipe. You want to explain that?
Yeah, I can explain that.
A sprinkler system?
So your fire sprinkler in the building, it has to drain every once in a while. Not only just test, but say a head goes off, a kid throws a ball, it goes off. Well, to be able to fix that, after you shut it down, you have to drain the system down. So periodically, there's these little test ports, is what it's called, but drains coming down and out the building. Well, again, it wasn't anticipated, but a drain at the low section of the building, which is at the far west side, was needed. It wasn't anticipated, but it was needed. Where it was needed was right in the middle of an office area. It was kind of unsightly. So in order to hide that, we're putting a drywall chase with an access panel. So pretty cheap, but still dollars and cents.
Okay. And the last thing is, you know, we're really not, we have a parking lot just to the east of the facility that's there where the trailers are, you know, the crossing trailers and so on. And we believe that parking lot is going to be used extensively, even by the employees, probably more so on a daily basis. In fact, we have no idea yet to know how many parents are going to come up and drive up and access the parking lot. So it probably would be wise for us to have most employees park in that lot, as well as overflow for early childhood events at night and Irving events. And what we don't want is a green space to walk through mud in the rain between that parking lot and the facility. So you want to explain to them that?
So there's two different sections of this change order. The change order that's before you is everything up to the property line. We've got to be very specific on this, on the funding portion of it, to where we can't go over the property line. It's just for the property. So the change order number 54 that you see before you, that is basically from the eastmost entrance, taking the sidewalk, cutting into the hillside, because right now it's elevated up about 3 feet. So we're cutting into the hillside and extending towards the east lot. Now, at the east lot, there's going to be another probably internal change order to get from that point actually to the lot.
And that will have to be on us.
That will have to be on you through another funding
But
source.
it's a small, much smaller portion and not, we don't believe as near as expensive.
No, I think that's anticipated $1,300.
Yeah, on us. But we can't because of this CDGB, requirements.
All right.
Okay, and the other thing is, you probably want to look at the contingency, right? Drum roll. So we had started with $153,269 and some change back in October. And by adopting this, these change orders, this PCCO, we would get down, our contingency would still be over $100,000 at $116,206.28 would be our new contingency if you adopt this tonight. We believe we are about a month out of substantial completion. We're getting there. And we're hoping this is going to carry us on through.
Yeah. And on a positive note, as Dr. Cicetta said, we're roughly 80% complete. That's total duration. That's including all final completion. So when we look at breaking up the project, we look at substantial completion, which is your C of O, your certificate of occupancy, and then final completion to be able to get punch list items complete. So there's two different milestones. So the first milestone would be essentially Christmas, getting substantially complete. There still may be punch list items like touch-up paint or flooring or something like that, but we're going to be substantially complete in the Christmas realm. Take an additional month, and we're looking at final completion somewhere around the end of January, 1st of February.
Okay. Great. And so the big question is, if we're 80%, how much buffer could be in that last 20%?
You know, we built in a little bit of buffer based on the size of the project. We anticipate about a month to do punch list items.
Okay.
Crossland goes through and does our own punch list items first, and then the architect comes through and does his punch list items. So there's 2 rounds of punch list, and we anticipate 2 weeks per punch list item. Also on a really good note, we're working on finish flooring. We're working on millwork inside. Of course, I don't know if you all have seen the inside, but a lot of paint, a lot of color is going on. As far as exterior, you're going to see a lot of landscaping going on, and asphalt starts next week. So it's going to be really, really close to finishing within a couple of next couple of weeks.
Okay, appreciate that. Any questions? Okay, no questions. I'll make a motion that we approve that change order as presented.
I will second that.
All right, I made the motion, Derek made the second. Discussion? Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, that motion passes. All right, thanks, Aaron. Okay. Next up, Dr. Langford, approval of the audit report.
Mr. President, with your indulgence, I would like to move up number 4 because we do have a guest that's got to go back to
Oh,
Kansas
please.
City tonight.
That's fair.
Joe Kinder, if he would come up from George K. Baum. And if we could just go then to item 4, then we'll deal with the other ones once he's completed. But we've been discussing with you the refinancing of a portion of the bonds that were issued in 2012 and 2013. They took, it wasn't the entire bonds, but those that had the higher interest rate. And be the process where we set money aside, and then at the callable date, we will pay those off, but we will be replacing some 5% bonds with some slightly over 3% bonds. So I'm going to turn it now to Joe or Mr. Kinder and let him explain to you and get your blessing on this so we can move forward.
Great, absolutely. Thanks, folks. And the timing turns out to be very fortuitous. I wish I could take credit for it, but this is what's called an advance refunding, and both the House and Senate tax reform bills would eliminate your ability to do advance refundings as of December 31st of this year. So it's nice to go in and save a bunch of money and do it in a timely manner in case they were to take this opportunity away from you. So these are your Fund 3, your GO bonds, your dedicated tax levy only for paying back bricks and mortar. And we're out in the market with a bidding process to purchase your bonds today. We received 11 bids, which is a good number of bids. You should feel really good about the process. The cover, or the second best bid, was 0.08 of a percentage point above the winning bid. So very competitive process. And Citigroup out of New York City, well, they're actually out of Charlotte and Texas, this group, but they're based in New York City, was the winning bidder, had the lowest total interest costs. I will just kind of give you the highlights of, hopefully you have uploaded a packet of numbers. I'm not going to take all night. I'm going to give you the highlights, and any questions you might have, you let us know. Out in the market issuing $24,465,000 worth of bonds there on page 1 under the par amount of bonds. This is, page 1 is the sources and uses, where the money's coming from, where it's going. So the bonds were structured by the buyer to have about $2.5 million of premium for a total of just under $27 million in total proceeds. Where that money went, you have an escrow fund that will sit out there. What an advance refunding does is takes advantage of low interest rates in today's market for a bond issue that you can refund at some point in the future. In this case, there's two separate call dates on these two issues, but 2022 and 2023. So we're able to go in now and lock in interest rates at a low rate. And what happens then is you put the proceeds from the sale of the bonds into an escrow account, and it essentially pays on itself until such time as you can refund those, and then it will pay off just the principal amount of those bonds, and you will begin paying on the lower interest rate bonds. The cost of issuance, we'll go over that here in a little bit, $114,000. Total underwriter's discount of $73,000. That is what Citigroup is going to charge you to do their work. And then the rounding amount, $4,400. That will go right back into your Fund 3. So that's technically savings, but these bonds have to be sold in $5,000 increments. And so we don't get down to the penny like you would on a home mortgage or a car loan or something like that. And you can see the total uses and sources match up there at just under $27 million. So the important page, page 2, that's the savings. If I was going to point you to something, I would point you to in that table at the top, the 3 columns to the right, starting from the third one in from the right, the net new D/S. That's basically the new payments that you will be making if you enact the resolution tonight to enact this refunding. The next column over to the right, the old net D/S. That is what you were paying or would pay without doing the refunding. And the column on the right nets that out for you. And again, no savings because you will continue to pay on these bonds until 2022 and then 2023. But on down from there, you'll see a savings of about $100,000 in 2023 and then over $250,000.
So Joe, we're having a little trouble finding the page you're
Oh, I'm sorry.
In a paper one, there's a paper one on the left-hand side.
in your
Behind
packet.
I apologize, everyone. I'm just kind of flying through this. It says Joplin Schools, Joplin, Missouri.
So the back of the first page.
Yeah, it's not, this is just our financial report.
sorry.
There should be something from George K. Powell.
I'm sorry, that's where my eyes are drawn to.
I won't give it away.
But yeah, sorry about that. Let me know. Let's make sure everybody's
He was
got it.
scrolling
pulled
the
up.
PowerPoint
Looking
piece
to
and
the
it
end.
wasn't on
It
there.
wasn't in that one. You're all set.
Well, that's what Lori was
Yep.
doing too.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's about over $250,000 a year through 2029, and then actually over $500,000 a year in 30 and 31, and then you will pay off the vast majority of those bonds, and so then the savings will go down in 32 and 33. But the total is totaled for you down below that at $2.8 million, over $2.8 million, and that's net of all the fees and expenses that went into this issuance. So that is actual total interest cost savings that the district will experience over time. There's some time value of money calculations below that say, you know, what would you have to invest today to have $2.8 million in the future as these savings come in. And then there's a percentage value, 3 lines up from the bottom of those lines on that page 2 that are over, both of those are over 8%. What does that mean? It doesn't really mean a whole lot. I mean, what the point is, you're saving over $2.8 million, but as a frame of reference, a while ago, over a decade ago, DESE, the State Department, used to pay for your cost of issuance when you did a refunding, as long as you could show a minimum threshold of savings. So they basically set up a threshold. They said, to do a refunding for savings purposes, you have to save 1.5%. So you're out there saving over 5 times what the state would have required back then when they made a determination on what that was. So what it means is it's a good deal no matter how you cut it, that you're saving $2.8 million today, and you should feel really good about that. The next page, the pricing summary, page 3, it should say pricing summary up there at the top, and there's a very small table because we only have essentially 3 different maturities, but 4 columns in on the left, the yield column, that's the really important one, 2.35%, 2.69%, 3.08%. Between those 3, you borrowed money at just a little over 3%, 3.05% when you factor in the costs, the premium, and some other things as actual interest costs. So you're borrowing money at under 3.1%. You were out for most of these at about 5%, and 4.5%, and then several of them were 5%. So you're significantly reducing your interest rate on these bonds, and that's where that savings is coming from. Again, I'm just kind of breezing through this. Be happy to answer any questions. The next page, page 4, is just going to line out your principal and interest costs on a semi-annual basis. This will match up for the most part with that net new D/S on that comparison page, with the exception of the fact that the payments from 18 through 22 and then a portion of them in 23 will be actually paid by the escrow. So these, admittedly, our numbers running program, and everybody across the country uses it, is not wonderful at producing printouts for everyone. The next page, crossover escrow cash flow fund. What this is saying is basically it's giving you the performance on that escrow. So it's invested as well. Typically, it's invested in something called slugs, which are state and local government securities, which is just something that is a rate that the federal government basically sets aside for you. We were actually out in the market today using a firm, Kazi Dimgan out of Denver, who specializes in this, one of the best firms in the country, and bid out an open market escrow. So there are other permitted investments that you can be in. They're very limited, typically just federal debt notes, whether it's T-bills, T-bonds, T-notes. And they went out and did a bidding process, and we had, I think, 6 or 8 bidders on that process as well, and saved you about $100,000 additionally by earning some additional interest by going out and bidding that over where slugs would have been. So the important thing down there is the yield down on the bottom right. That 2.8%, I'd love to tell you that's what that is, but that's yield for arbitrage purposes. That's something totally different. You're getting over 2% on your money out over 5 years, which is not an insignificant amount of interest earned. If you look in that column back up at the top in the middle on that table, you're earning over $1 million in interest over the course of that escrow sitting there. So that's really performing well for you, and that also is additional, helping you drive some savings in that $2.8 million worth of savings. The detailed cost of issuance, and this is the last page I'll cover, and then the rest of it is kind of the supporting material breaking out the 2012 and the 2013 issues. The 2 biggest fees, of course, are our fee there at the top as financial advisor, $36,697.50. That is based on the agreement we have with the district at basically 0.015% of the par amount of the issue, or $1.50 per $1,000 issued is what we charge you there. The next is bond counsel at $56,855. They're responsible for drafting all the documents. They also issue the opinions that these bonds are tax exempt, both for federal income tax purposes and state income tax purposes, and make sure you're in compliance with the IRS and all kinds of other fun stuff as they work through there. Escrow trustee, there is someone who will manage that escrow for you over the course of time and make sure the payments and the money are coming and going as they should be. Escrow verification, that's a group that goes in and basically verifies that all the numbers are correct and accurate so that nobody's left. There's a lot of moving parts here so that nobody's left owing money at the end of this or with extra money. We want everything to go down to the penny even when we're talking about a $27 million deal. The rating agency fee, We were out, about a month ago, and Dr. Langford and Susan and Gigi got grilled for over an hour by Standard & Poor's and asked a lot of questions, and I will tell you they were very impressed with the management and the job that both your administration and the board is doing with your finances. You all received an A+ rating, which is a really great rating, and as you look across the state, you'd have to basically be a suburban Kansas City school or suburban St. Louis school with over $1 billion in assessed value to do better than that. One of the things that they really focus on is median income levels and some things, income economics throughout the district that you don't have a whole lot of control over, and that's about 2/3 to 3/4 of the rating. And so you are getting the top level management score, and sitting at an A+, you should feel really good about, and that was a nice validation of the work that you all are doing. And I tell you, your administration was very impressive on the call. They, the analysts there at Standard & Poor's got talked over their heads several times, and they kind of had to back up and figure some things out. So that's that 12,600, and what that helps you do when you have a rating is that accesses more buyers that can come in and buy your bonds, and so you get lower interest rates as a result of that. POS official statement, there's a firm that goes out and makes sure that every single potential investor across the country would have access to these documents on an electronic basis so that they can do their due diligence research and get bids, and that's what helps us get 11 bids and have such a competitive process. The state auditor charges $1,000 to register your bonds. As long as you all will have us back down here, I know you worked with Greg Bricker for a long time, I'm going to tell you this story. That used to be $1 per 1,000. So that would have cost you $24,000. So you saved $23,000 today because of Greg Bricker, who you worked with a long time. He, in 2009, he decided that bond issues had gotten big enough that had really started to cost people, and it's only about 2 or 3 hours worth of work at the state auditor's office. And so if you're out doing a $100 million bond issue, you're paying $100,000 to register these bonds. And Greg got together with a couple of legislators, drafted a bill, and put an emergency clause on it, and he has been saving school districts, not just his clients, school districts across Missouri, thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to put back in construction funds to build better facilities for kids, and to put, in this case, in refunding to save more taxpayer dollars all across the state. And that's something really that we used to take credit for as George K. Baum and Company, but that's something that really that Greg did on his own. And he passed away here about 1.5 years ago, and so it's important to me, and I hope you can, understand and listen to that story every time I come down, that part of his legacy carries on. I know that most of the work that I do is based on his mentorship and his training. And so just a little bit about Greg there, that you'll always remember that he continues to save you money. And so second time I've gotten through it without crying, so that's good. The QSIP Bureau, you've got some, just basically some kind of administrative stuff there that makes these bonds tradable, where we've got to give them basically a name, each individual one, and so that's a fee as well. So that's the issue, the summary, saving $2.8 million. The action item, the agenda, or the action item, the resolution that's on the screens is authorizes the issue and sale and delivery of the bonds, and also awards Citigroup as the winner, and I would recommend that you do award that bid to Citigroup as the winning bidder of the lowest total interest cost for you all and the largest savings.
Well, I will certainly move that we authorize the issuance and sale of general obligation school refunding bonds, Missouri Direct Deposit Program Series 2017, submitted by Gilmore and Bell Bond Council.
I'll second it.
All right, motion by Sherrick, second by Deborah.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, that motion passes. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, folks.
Stick around, we'll sign some stuff, we'll save $2.8 million.
I think he has left everything you need to sign and
That's right.
something to mail it back. So
That's
All right, we'll take care of it. Thank you.
very much.
Thank you. All right, so that's $2.8 million, thank you. Now, Dr. Langford,
Okay, if we could go back.
go back to number 2.
Audit.
To the audit report.
Okay.
And interesting, he talked about the interest that would be accruing in this, and the auditor, when they gave their report, talked about the interest. It looked like it dropped because of this. Well, now we will start seeing interest because of this again as we accrue over time, as long as the money's held till the bonds are repaid. But the good news is, too, also about the interest. I was asked a question about the last month we asked you to do the municipal investment program, and you did, and so we structured and we put $8 million. We'll probably put another $2 million in tomorrow, And I just did a real calculation, just that move alone over the life of those bonds, and we will invest more. But that's about, when we invest more, about 18,000 above the rate that we're getting on our bank accounts, you know, and is well north of $100,000. So we're really excited about the interest earnings that we're getting. And so when we get our big tax money in the month of December, we will be investing more, and it's going to be a nice revenue years for us, getting some interest earnings we've not been getting before. So we're excited about that. But on the audit report, actually, you were provided the information. We need to get you to approve the audit report, which would lead then to the publication of the audit. Is required. We're required after 30 days, within 30 days of having received the audit, that we publish this, and it will be published in the local newspaper or circulation in the area. Assuming you have no questions or no reason not to, we ask that you accept the audit report as was presented and authorize publication.
All right.
I'll move that we accept the audit report and authorize publication.
All right. Motion by Lori. Second by Derek. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, that passes. All right. Thank you. Next up, accounts payable.
You have the information on the accounts payable, and again, based on the financial report and what you see on the accounts payable, everything is tracking in order. You would notice accounts payable last month was $13 million, which times 12 will not meet what we do, but that's because we had an $8 million check for the investment of those funds. So back that off, and the expenses for that month were $5.7 million. So certainly payroll and just the ongoing business that we do month to month. To me, I saw nothing in there that's problematic, but would answer questions or try to find the answers.
Questions?
I'll move that we approve payment of the bills in the amount of $13,774,918.55.
All right. Motion by Sherrick.
I'll second that.
Second by Brent. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, that motion passes. Next up then, McKinley Elementary School. Sandra.
This is a purchase, or we're supposed to purchase Chromebooks out of their Title I money. So it's not, it's money that's designated for McKinley.
I'll move that we approve purchase of the Chromebooks for McKinley for $27,900.
I will second that.
All right, motion by Sherrick, second by Derek. Discussion? Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, that motion passes. Sandra, if you want to hang out right there, I know your name's coming up again. Dr. Moss?
The next thing we have is to talk about our April 3rd, 2018 school board election, and that date has been set. We will have 2 director positions chosen to serve as members of the board, and that will be for terms of 3 years. First date of filing will be Tuesday, December 12th, beginning at 8, and the closing date is January 16 at 5 p.m. And administration recommends the board ratify the attached resolution, which calls for the April 3rd election, and approve the date of December 12th, 2017 as the first day of filing, January 16 as the last day for school board candidate as required by law.
If there's any questions? No
I'll make the
question.
motion consistent with Dr. Moss's reading of it.
All right.
I will second that.
Motion by Sherrick, second by Derek. All right.
So moved.
Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, that motion passes. Excellent, thank you. Next up, policy updates, first reading. Dr. Moss?
Yes, this is the first reading, and we did go over this in our board committee. And so you've had time to review those. The first one deals with that one is required by law, and it's a revision to allow people actually that are found guilty of federal misdemeanors to run for school board. So that is a change to Senate Bill 111. And then I believe Ashley has detail on the other two, but it deals with professional and support staff leaves.
Right, currently the policy states that employees may not use personal leave the day prior to or the day after a holiday. And we are currently not in compliance with that, in that there are times whenever employees
Like today as an example?
need to utilize leave, and sometimes it's the best choice for our kids
Right.
too, rather than taking 3 days off during the year. They're taking 1 day prior to a holiday, so it allows for a little bit more flexibility and also an opportunity to, it's a planned absence, so an opportunity to enter it prior to the day of. So it allows us an opportunity to acquire substitutes in advance on a day that may be a little bit of a challenge to acquire appropriate substitutes.
And then your last policy revision had to do with some confusion on the consequences in student discipline. The use of just the word "or" made it a little bit ambiguous to where is it a range of things and we can impose more than one, which is
Right.
the practice and how MSBA intended. But what they did then in the highlighted sentence, they added that administrators have discretion to impose one or more of the listed consequences for a given offense. That takes care of the and/or piece.
Okay. And these went through the policy committee?
Yes.
Okay. So with that being the case, I would move that we approve these policy updates, 7A, B, C, and D together. I'll make that motion to approve the first reading.
I'll second that.
All right. So I made the motion, Brett made the second. Discussion? Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, those pass. All right. Sandra, welcome back.
Well, on all three of these, the first one, we have 5 elementary schools that need to have their System 44 upgraded because the version they're using is the end of life. And I asked Eric, our Title I person, why only 5? And it's because the others have already been upgraded in the past. And so they have next generation. For those 5 elementaries that will come out of their title funds, it's part of their Title I plan. For the middle schools and high school, they do not have title funds for their buildings, so that comes out of the special, that's in the special ed budget. And we've done that in the past as well. And then to upgrade the next generation, Scholastic requires that we have so many days of PD where they come to our district and work with those teachers that are using the next generation to get the appropriate training.
Okay. Any questions for Sandra? No questions. I'll be happy to entertain a motion regarding the upgrade of these.
So moved.
All right, so Derek has made the motion to approve 8A, B, C, and Lori is second. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. All right, last but not least, Dr. Saketa.
Okay, Dave and I met with some officials from the city in the past about the parking lot behind Joplin High School. And then recently we met with engineers, and the city has plans on Grand Street to improve the sidewalks, okay? And it just so happens, if you know the parking lot I'm talking about between 21st and 22nd, a little bit unsightly, would you agree? And it's something that we need to take care of. And it's in our plans to take care of. Well, they're very timely in the fact that they want to improve the sidewalk, which is also going to help us. This easement would be in force for about up to a year if needed, but they believe they'll get all the work done in the summertime. And what they would do is peel the side of that hill that goes around it down and make that elevation more proper and probably not really encroach much into our parking lot at all, if any. But they want an easement on the east, north, and south of that lot so that they can go back in and improve the sidewalks, okay? And they will taper that hill down and make that decline so it'll be better for everybody involved. It'll be more, better for drainage, and it'll be better just all around. And as you know, there are crumbling steps coming down that. We have one that we have a railing on, and then we're gonna have to come back later and bring that parking lot up to speed when it comes to, city codes and those kind of things, and improve that, and also probably put in at least 1 or 2 stair steps down, if we continue to use this parking lot. So essentially, it's an easement, for a temporary easement for this period of time until they get that work done.
But they'll improve it some where we won't have to do that much later.
That's big.
So are they going to give us some money for that temporary easement?
$1.
I'm just kidding. I was just hoping we could
that's what the
replace a
paper says.
light fixture or
Yeah.
something.
No, yeah, no, they're not.
Partially pay
Is
for
this
a bowl.
one? No,
Yeah.
$1.
It's going to reduce the cost of us having to straighten it up
Yes,
ourselves
it
later.
is a very good trade-off for us in the end
Okay.
on that.
Okay.
All right.
I move that we approve the temporary easement with the city of Joplin.
I will second that.
Motion by Brett, second by Derek. All right. No further discussion, please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, okay, that motion passes. Okay, we're up to plus delta. What did we do? Good?
Very good.
Good?
Lots of information presented.
Lots of data?
Lots of hours of work behind each
Yeah.
item that was presented
Uh,
tonight.
And, I mean, saving over $2 million, okay, 2.8 million, that's a plus when we can do that.
Huge plus.
And then if I could indulge a plus, since we are on the eve of Thanksgiving break, just to let everyone know how thankful I am to be in Joplin. It's a great time to be in Joplin. And thankful for the people I get to work alongside each day, and that includes our board. So,
Great, thank you. Anything we can do differently? Save 2.8 every month?
I would like to go back to the plus delta and offer
Okay.
major kudos to Susan Smith and Dr. Langford and that whole group. That was a terrific audit report. I hope everybody appreciates what we heard.
Yeah.
Keep making us look good.
Yeah.
Made us look very good.
and an A+ rating.
Yeah.
That's
really good.
fantastic. That's a big deal on
Yeah.
cost of funds
Yeah.
for the district.
And 27.5% on the reserves. Thank you.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Great
So-
job.
So, appreciate it, guys. If nothing else, how about the only deltas, we went over about 6 minutes over our 90-minute break, so, but let's get out of here. Motion?
I will motion
All right, Derek will made the motion, I'll second it, please vote.
yes.
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 Yes, okay. Adjourn.